Hi, everybody, and welcome to our complimentary webinar, which is brought to you today in partnership with our fantastic partners, COPC and Customer Science. The session today is entitled AI Implementation, What It Takes. And I'm really excited to be getting underneath not just some of the hype and the noise that we're hearing in the environment, but really getting underneath, hearing some of the data, and then getting some insights into, really what does it take to get things over the line, and some of the implementation stories that we're going to hear from Bart and Todd. In the spirit of reconciliation, Auscontact acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, waters, and community. We pay our respect to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all First Nations people who are joining us today. Today's webinar will run for approximately 60 minutes, and during that time, with the help of our special guests, Alex, Todd, and Bart, we hope to spark your interest and engage you in a conversation, as well as really provide some ideas for you to take back to your respective businesses. To round off the session, we'll have a Q&A, but lots of opportunity for you to participate and ask some of those questions that you generally don't get the opportunity to ask. I'm Fran Southwood, CEO of Auscontact, and I will be your moderator for today. Remember, the most important thing for you to get more out of this is to interact with the session. That maximizes the benefit that you can take away. As you would know, there's no need to take too many notes because we'll provide you with a recording of the webinar and any of the slides that Alex and the team are happy to share with us. So Todd and Bart will jump in and see which ones make sense to share with the audience as well. For you to interact with us, we encourage you to use the QA button on the control panel or the chat feature. You can ask questions or make comments anytime throughout it for Alex, Todd, or Bart. And if it's relevant to what they're actually talking about there and then, I'll jump in and get them to actually either further explain or address whatever it is that you're asking for. If it's something that's more general, we'll keep it till the end of the at the end of the session, like at the Q&A. But if you are anything like me, I think of a great question, I forget to write it down, I'll never remember that question again. So as you're going, type them down so that you don't lose sight of them. If you're listening through headphones or speakers and experience any issues with your connection, please use the raise hand button on the panel and one of the team will jump in and try and help. Alternatively, there is a phone number that you can access and utilise that would have been in your original registration confirmation email. We will be doing a poll during the session, so make sure you participate in that. It's always a great way for Alex and Todd to really kind of get an understanding of where you are now, and it helps them actually make sure they're able to then sort of connect with that in the session that they build. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm now going to introduce our wonderful speakers for today. We are, as I said, joined by the fabulous Alex Boland, Director of Operations ANZ from COPC. Alex, obviously we do loads with you, so we love getting the insights that you gain from the data. We've got Bart Thomas, Principal at Customer Science Group. And Bart, I know you are the guru of implementation when it comes to, new AI, opportunities and applications that you're seeing with your customers. And last, but certainly not least, we have the wonderful Todd Gorsuch, who is the Chief Executive Officer at Customer Science Group. Guys, thank you so much for joining us today. We love having these sessions that give so much information and practical information at that to our members. Alex, I think I'm handing over to you. Can't wait for the session.
By all means. Let me give you a brief overview of what I will talk about. I might hand across briefly to Todd and Bart, and then they'll jump in later on as well. So, Fran, great to be back here again. Many of you probably have seen my face rather, or spoken to me in person. So I'm on the New South Wales Committee for Auscontact, and for 15 years I've been working with COPC, doing implementations, benchmark reviews, training, lots of different things, always in operations, helping people to improve those operations. A lot of what we do is research based, so that will be my section to kick off with, is what's happening in the industry, both in Australia and globally with these emerging technologies. So I'll get into that in a moment, but Bart and Todd, do you want to briefly introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I might go first, Bart, and then I'll hand over to you. I'm also a New South Wales committee member. I'm quite inspired also by the concept of getting practical value out into the
Mm.
community so we can all get better. And that's really the purpose of today. Bart and I have seen quite a number of AI solutions that are coming into market. We are deploying those solutions, and people are very different sort of scale of their implementations today. Some are planning, some are through them, some are failing, some are succeeding. And so we just hope to share a couple of those experiences and then how people are probably getting the most out of those learnings into some real practical implementation approaches. And so that's what I hope to share with you today. And maybe, Bart, I know you're going to talk a little bit also about some case studies. Do you want to do an intro?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Bart Thomas. I'm a principal consultant in our AI and automation practice. And yes, as Todd has indicated, we're at the coalface, working with a number of clients on AI initiatives at the moment. Certainly, many really are in the pilot phase at this point. Large organizations are rightfully sort of treading carefully, but it's a fascinating time to be working in this space. And I look forward to sharing some of those insights with you.
Thanks, guys. Let me try to baseline or ground our discussion in terms of thinking about AI solutions, AI-powered solutions, because I'm not sure, I'm not sure we're all aligned on what that actually means. And I know that even myself, in someone who's working in this space and helping with deployments, like there's aspects to this thing that is just super complex. So I like to think about in the contact center operation that there's really three categories of these solutions. The first one being the ones that customers are directly engaging with, whether that's the chatbots, whether that's a voice bot, whether it's even just in the IVR to route to the correct team. There's the customer touch solutions. Beyond that, it's what the production staff are using. So we would call them production solutions. So virtual agent assist, where you have a staff member that rather than engaging with 4 or 5 systems to complete a task, they can go into a chat and say, do this task, and the bot goes away and goes into those 4 systems for them. There's the automatic knowledge prompts that we commonly see where in real time a knowledge base article is loaded or a thing is highlighted to say this is the next step. There could be the real-time text translation speech as well. So I'm working with a client, it's a North American-based client, and one of the big channels is chat. All of their staff members are only chatting in English, but the customers are chatting in lots of different languages and having that real-time translation. And then the call summarization. So there's kind of the production AI solutions as well. And then the supporting solutions, things that are doing essentially a CSAT survey and saying how happy or unhappy the customer is, or what is the quality of that call, or what is WFM. So most of the solutions will fall into those customer touch, production, or support systems. In Australia, every year we do a survey with Auscontact. You, I imagine, have all got an email about that. I would encourage you to complete that survey. It's a big one, but we only ask you to do it once a year. And it helps us to understand what's happening in the industry. And by completing that survey, you get access to the full report free of charge as well. But one of the questions is, do you have AI in your operations now? And how are you using that? Last year's results are in green there, and then this year is in blue in 2025. So we only launched it last week. So we have 30 or 40 responses thus far. Typically, we get up to about, in terms of frontline staff, centers representing about 30,000 frontline staff. So it becomes quite exhaustive. At the moment, what's interesting is that the three that have really grown over the last 12 months is real-time guide. So the knowledge management has been adopted a lot more than last year. The quality aspects and the interaction analytics. So to do this, the sentiment analysis, the speech and text aspects have been the three jumps in the Australian market in these spaces. As I said, though, the survey only opened last week and we're still collecting data. Please complete that survey and we'll see if these gaps hold true or not. It'll be a good way of understanding it. One of the main hesitancies that operations have for adopting some of these solutions is the risk of customers being impacted or the business being impacted. Like what happens if it goes wrong? So with that in mind, I included a case here for North America, nothing to do with COPC, but I think it's a fascinating case of the same sort of technology being used. And this is some police departments in America using the recordings, both the voice and video of their body cams, and then they're using AI to automatically write up a police report. So when they've had an interaction with the member of public, rather than actually sitting down at the end of the day and typing that all up, there's a I suppose, police incident summarization, and then the police officer scans it at the end of the day and says, I need to change this or that, which in my mind is like a pretty wild use of AI and potentially high risk. Like if they get it wrong, then there could be an impact on someone's criminal record, for example. So if that's where the technology is and they're exploring that way, I feel like call summarization in the call center when you don't even see the customer, like the customer doesn't see the notes. Like it's a much easier use case to get people over the line for some of these tools. I think one of the barriers, though, to adoption, even though we're seeing the adoption rates being really high, is that most centers in Australia will have a partner involved before they get to their Genesis or their Amazon or their NICE. So you'll be with Blackbox or Datacom or Telstra will be the reseller. We recently did a survey and we asked contact center managers, who do you use as your partner? And essentially, how happy are you with them and various different aspects of their performance. Overwhelmingly, it wasn't terribly positive or negative. It was around 70% for most of these things. So satisfaction about 70%, some of these attributes higher or lower. But the one I highlighted in red is keeping you up to date about new features. The consensus, like more than 50% of contact center leaders are unhappy with their partner's ability to keep them up to date with their new features. And these are evergreen solutions. Like there's changes happening to Amazon or to Genesis or to all of the solutions, typically on a monthly or quarterly basis. So we need to be up to date with those new features and how we can deploy them. But the data would suggest that the partners are better at keeping you, enrolling you on the tool and keeping you up on the tool. So resolving outages as opposed to like looking at where you can operationalize the new opportunities in terms of that technology. In terms of where our centers are using AI in operations globally, this is from one of our GBS surveys that's on our website. But we asked, so this is to people all around the world, not just Australia. We asked, how are you using AI? So you had to get the adoption rate in that matrix and what is the ROI? And it's interesting, we find that over time the ROI goes up, like a greater proportion of people agree that they're getting strong ROI. But most of them are somewhere in the middle. Chatbots have a fairly high adoption, sentiment things like contact analysis and whatnot is relatively high. But the one I highlighted in that scatter plot is QA. QA has a relatively high adoption rate, but a relatively low ROI from the perspective of the people who bought that solution. So that's one that is an interesting one to consider. And I want to talk about that on the next few slides because I think there's a little bit of a blind spot that we accept that if a tool says they're AI, they are AI, and because they are AI, it can be trusted because it's got all this data and it's learned so much. The data would suggest that at least some of these solutions aren't living up to the hype and that we need to be really intentional and have a roadmap of how we're going to deploy them and how we're going to test them. And we shouldn't just trust the solutions. So this data here, I realize like 3 charts in one slide is a lot of data. I'll just summarize them for you. But it's from an insurance company I worked with in this region. And they were using AI to score transactions and not just score it from a quality point of view, but also from a customer. So they would say, essentially, this customer was happy and the quality was good. But at the same time, they were still doing the survey. So the customers could actually do their own survey. And they still had QAs scoring those same transactions. So I was able to cross-reference and do that correlation analysis. And what we found is that the customer score, like when customers completed a survey, compared to the AI score when the bot says this was a happy or unhappy customer, there was no correlation. There was no connection. The bot would say they're happy when they was happy. The customer would say they were happy when the bot says they weren't happy. There was no connection. This wasn't a freshly deployed solution that they were revising. This was like in production, using it to manage staff members' solution. And it was just disconnected. And then down the bottom left, it was the AI quality score compared to when humans scored that same transaction. And again, there was no connection. Now, that maybe they're both miscalibrated, but there's no calibration to each other. And the interesting one was on the top right-hand side, the AI score to itself. So when AI said this was a good quality call, and then it actually scored that call, it would often say it was a bad call. Like the customer score and the quality score coming from the same system had no connection. The AI wasn't even calibrated to itself. Which is like pretty wild when you're paying potentially tens of thousands of dollars each month for these tools, and they're not calibrated to anything at all. The other one that I came across, different client, but same sort of solution, AI for QA now, they had a tool, they called it AI, like the name of the tool was like AI quality. It wasn't that because I don't want to say the name, but they called it AI. But the steps that it actually did, all it did was it transcribed the call into text and then it would apply a scoring system for QA. It would say, we want to score active listening. So if the agent said perfect or no worries at all, it would say that's active listening. We give it a thumbs up for that. If it said bad attitude was like a negative one, so you get less points for that. If you said that's not if that phrase was uttered, you got negative points. And it was done with no intelligence, even though it's AI. There's no intelligence. As in, if a customer said something like, I've just been told that I need to go into the store to resolve it. And the agent said, oh, that's not my understanding. I think I should be able to help you now. Can I blah, blah, blah. They would fail that call because they uttered the phrase, that's not my. Like there's no understanding. The other one was roadside assist. And one of the critical things is if you break down on a highway, you want to get the customer off the highway and make sure they're physically safe before you get a tow truck coming out. So you need to say in a breakdown call, are you in a safe location? That was the mandated rule. But there was an example where a customer called up from their home and they said, hey, I'm calling from my garage. My car's not starting. The staff member didn't say, are you in a safe location? Because they're at home in the garage. And the AI tool said, fail. There's a compliance critical error because they didn't check they're in a safe place. And yet again, like $100,000 a year for this tool, it's an AI tool. Like, is it really AI if it's just kind of brute force, find and replace? So I think we need to be really cautious when we talk about AI, that it's genuinely tools that are AI and that we test them. We don't just turn them on and accept the output that they're giving. And before I hand over, I want to touch on two final points, which they're the different perspective on AI, as in rather than AI solutions from the organization, I've had a couple of clients in Australia in the last year get this call. And I paraphrased it slightly, but the agent answers the call and it says, a voice plays, hey, I'm Bob's Google voice bot. He asked me to hold his place in the queue. Please hold and I'll get Bob back on the line. And this call is going to be recorded. So it's a customer using a bot to call a contact center and hold their place in the queue. When we think about AI solutions and we think about bots, it's no longer a conversation purely of how we are going to use the bots. Customers are starting to use bots to interact with us because, hopefully this isn't shocking, they don't actually want to call you. They just want their issue resolved. And we are going to see customers using bots more and more over the coming years. So for instance, I think we'll see, well, we're already seeing this kind of first level of hold my place in the queue, just simple things. But then I think we're going to see more and more informational questions, open information, like public available. So you say to your phone, like, hey Google, hey Siri, can you confirm if XYZ has, I don't know, driver assist feature? And then the bot, if it can't find the information with confidence, it will call the call center and do a voice bot interaction. After that, it will be closed information. So call my doctor, confirm my appointment's on tomorrow. Can you contact the plumber, confirm he's still coming out today? That sort of thing. Then there'll be action-based interactions with bots. It's like, your credit card expired, you have a new credit card. It's like, hey Google, contact every company that has a direct debit set up and give them my latest credit card details. And then finally, the annoying ones, people will be giving bots the job of calling their bank and arguing for an interest rate reduction or a discount on the health premium or all of that. And what's kind of somewhat terrifying to me as someone involved in the industry is that if we are not in front of this, if we don't have our own self-service solution or our own bots to support these interactions, we will be paying staff members to handle calls from bots, and then the bots are basically free to call us. So like potentially the volume ends up really high. And if we're not in front of this, it's a bit scary. And let me share a practical application. There's this company in North America called Rocket Money that maybe a couple of you have come across, and they predominantly help you to manage your own finances. That's their pitch. But they also have this service, which is, let me lower your bills for you. And what you're meant to do as a customer, and there's a faith-based question here, like, do you trust them to do this? You take a photograph of your Telstra bill, for example. You share your personal data with them, your name, your date of birth, your etc. So I assume they can pass a privacy check, and then they will call Telstra on your behalf and argue for a discount. And if they get a discount, it's free for you to use the service. But if you get a discount, they will get like 30% of the savings and you get 60%. That's one of their business models. And it's just a matter of time until this sort of service, I think, becomes more common, but it's bots doing it. And if the bots get the discount, the company makes money and you save money. It's a scary idea if maybe in 2028, like 30% of the calls we get are actually from bots, AI-powered bots that are coming through to us, and we're using our bots to try to train up against that. So the future is really interesting, and we need to really get in front of this. I'm a little bit ahead of
I'm
time.
just gonna, sorry,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna throw, we've got a question just from
Ooh, yes,
Max in relation to that case study that you referenced before with the QA.
Yeah.
And Max has just asked, you know, when you reference the AI type capabilities, particularly for the auto QA, how many contact centers are using traditional AI that wouldn't understand that use that you provided, someone's calling from home in a safe place, versus a generative AI that caters for those sorts of scenarios?
Yeah. It's still only a handful of centers I've worked with in the last year doing this, so maybe about 10 or so. And it's a combination, like a fairly even split from that. It's sometimes not clear, like it's a kind of a black box how it makes the decisions, and it's not clear what the process is. I was able to get a little bit deeper on that. I would say, though, every time I've gotten the actual data and done the math, done the correlation analysis, there's never been a correlation between how the bot scores it and how people score it, or how the customer scores it and how the bot scores it. I'm yet to see a proper, we actually tested it, we have confidence it's scoring correctly. So ultimately, I don't know directly the answer to that question, but I'm really hesitant about the capability of these solutions, at least at this stage, like February 2025.
Thanks. So it's super interesting though, right? Because we are hearing that a bit, that it's still it's almost time boxed around, you know, the old, you know, if this and that type scenario. Yet it's got so much additional capability, but it's almost, there's almost this retrofit to the current thinking as opposed to expanding it beyond what is that standard practice of implementation. And, you know, Bart and Todd, I'm sure you're going to touch on a few of those components as well. It's like a system implementation where you design for what you've always done, but suddenly you've got this amazing opportunity in front of you.
Yeah. Yeah, I find there's two common experiences I come across with clients, at least. One is that they're really hesitant to do anything with AI, and the other extreme is they want AI to solve every problem and they just trust that as an AI solution and it can do it for them. And both are obviously not the right approach. We need to trust but verify. Let me hand over to Todd.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Alex. I really love your insights. You've always got really good data, and I think it just showcases the challenges that are out there in the market, and the opportunities as well, really, because it's coming, right? So to your point, volumes could be crazy. So it'd be nice to get in front of that and not suffer these challenges of potentially doing the wrong thing and getting your QA wrong and maybe lighting your hair on fire like this poor guy here. So I thought what we'd turn our attention to is a bit of some practical solutions. As I mentioned before, you know, trying to draw on some of our learnings that we've experienced and really consistent themes. And the first slide I just wanted to share with you is one that sort of talks about some of those common traps, I think, that we hear. And I think Alex's one was a brilliant one about the quality assurance, because that actually is a great trap where people throw the tool in without the training or without the care about understanding operations, and hey presto, it works, sure, but does it actually deliver a result? So that would be a really good risk to consider. The other ones that I've listed here, I think are nice ones to think about, because our solutions have ultimately been built around these issues that people raise. If people are not doing change and training as they deploy the solution, the common theme is that those organisations, their agents really just don't use the tools, or they push back and wonder why they're there. And that is actually quite common, particularly when people just switch the tool on. And some of the newer technology, because the Genesis technology is nice, and others, you can literally deploy the solution in minutes with a tick box. So without the training, though, it just doesn't work for the staff. So it's important to get that in. This idea of a holistic service is the other one that we see a little bit. And that's where organizations kind of do a point solution around a process instead of looking at their whole end-to-end service and understand the impact of that. And as the group would know here in the call center, you make a change in one part of your environment, that can have a dramatic impact on people or other business processes or spike contingency management, reporting. So it's the ability to see that thing end to end and make sure it's understood and everything's updated at once together. Starting too big is another one we do see. People get very excited about this technology, but there's a really nice stepping stone model that we'll share with you today. Sometimes people just really go at it, not as a dedicated project, but more just within the call center itself. There's quite a few risks of doing that. And usually what we have found is those organizations doing that actually get bogged down in their day job and never really complete the AI deployment that they want effectively. So it's the more you can dedicate some time to it, the easier it becomes. Having no policies for AI in people's businesses also is a challenge because people are not quite sure how much or how little they could use, what kind of data they might be using, etc., and what biases mean, etc., for their organisation. So getting that right, which is very quick because it's really just a document that is agreed to and used across the group, is a really good way to go. Number 6 is really around data protection and governance. AI is only as good as Alex described as the data that it's fed into it. So the ability to govern the data, secure the data, make sure it's held in a way that you're not releasing private data onto the internet or other locations for the staff. They're getting access to information they shouldn't. The last 2 around just really driving around success measures, being very clear about your business case. Why are we putting AI in place? If it's quality assurance and we're trying to drive quality assurance, then measuring that from start to finish, and then making sure that we execute with really visible standards. That has driven a lot of really good performance from the AI work that we've been doing recently. And then avoiding these point solutions, which is sort of what I was describing before, just solving a problem with a point solution, it will break something else often. And I sort of left that question at the bottom to just trigger people to think, well, what is your challenge? What are the challenges that you're specifically facing with potentially deployments, or the concern about putting the deployment in the first place for AI? And there are numerous ones of those. I thought it's useful to also get some concepts around the very different way that AI works in the development cycle compared to what it would work with a normal development activity. You'll see the red bar there that's kind of escalating up. To me, that's kind of our typical development activity where you use a coder to write a piece of code that has if then else, decision making, etc. It takes a long time to write that code. You kind of do a series of tests as you go, and then you kind of get to the end really quickly. You do through your test cycle, and then you release. But that takes months often to do. AI is a very, very different beast in our experience. In fact, it takes days to deploy models very often. So we literally can, for example, a chatbot, we could deploy within 1 day for an organization because the AI tools allow you to use prompt engineering, some simple AI development tools, and then you can test that model immediately on the day that you're deploying it. That difference of weeks to days is dramatic. And the reason I wanted to share that with people is because when you're thinking about deploying solutions, you can actually deploy your solution in quite a quick test way. And if you've got an idea about how AI might be able to help you, you can test, fail quickly, and get out without much expense. And then what you'll need to do is do all your training. So your fine tuning, optimization, that's what takes all the time. So it takes a bit of time then to go through that cycle. And Alex's example for QA really was a brilliant one because it looked like they did the first bit really fast, but that longer cycle of fine tuning, which is critical to be able to link quality assurance questions to regression analysis and make sure they're getting quality assurance results correct, that clearly wasn't done in that case, Alex. So yeah, I think that's a very different way of thinking about things, and it just means that the speed at which you can deploy AI solutions dramatically changes. I also think one of the challenges when we're looking at AI solutions is how do you select the right solution? And this is a busy slide, so I'll sort of break it down for you a little bit. And this is a Gartner quadrant. It's been around for a little while. It sits in the middle there, and it really talks about the different breakdown from left to right of, you know, each of the elements of the AI development piece. The far left-hand side is just really consuming it. And this has been around for a long time in the tools you're using today, like Google, Netflix. You literally switch it on, the AI is working in the background to surface the right information for you, and off you go. So all the blue is taken care of. All your application, your data retrieval, fine-tuning, the models, they're all taken care of it. On the far right-hand side, it's exactly the opposite, right? You have to build your own AI model from scratch, OpenAI, Claude. Obviously, if you're doing that end of the spectrum, you're spending, you know, hundreds of billions of dollars. That's really out of reach for pretty much everybody except the largest organizations. On the left-hand side, it's in reach for the backyard. You can literally turn on your telly and go for Netflix. And so there's a bunch in the middle. And the reason I like this slide is it helps really quickly select the right simple solutions that you can put into your center and get immediate results. So if I think about the ones that we're seeing a lot of are things like, you know, Verint has AI solutions, Genesis has AI solutions, NiceCX1, a whole bunch of the telephony platforms. We can literally bring those in because the application might need to be adjusted slightly in the embed cycle, but all the rest is done. So they're really easy ones to get started on. And then as you extend up to the more complicated ones, you can then get into some more complicated areas. As you've built all your IP and your skills at handling AI in your call center. So I hope that gives you just a kind of a stepping stone look into the way we like to work with organizations. It gets the best results we find. Start on the left-hand side with your solutions, get in a rhythm of delivering well, and then you can scale up into more complicated AI solutions and get greater returns as you do. I thought I might bring some of that a little bit to life through some real examples. So the first one I'll share with you is an organization we're working with in the financial space. They have used the Verint technology and the after-call wrap capability that sits within their technology to reduce average handle time. So that is literally writing the notes, coding the inquiry. If there's any final wrap-up pieces that need to be done, they're all automated for that organization. They had a great deal of challenge with change and training. And as a result, they really didn't get the benefits they wanted immediately. And they've since got on top of those. So they're receiving at least the 30-second to 1 minute reduction in average handle time across their organization, which is very material. And the cost of these systems as well, just to put it into perspective, is not very high in comparison to the benefits they might be receiving for something like that. We also did some work with, and so I'm sort of moving from that's probably the most simplest example. And then we sort of move our way up through the cycle of complexity. So I'll do the next one and then I'll hand over the more complex ones for Bart in a minute. But the next one's around major gift card supplier. So they wanted to move to AI, and if anybody's using Genesis, you'll know some of their knowledge solution has to be very structured to enter into their data, so then they would be able to use AI to surface that information. The challenge for that organization was that they actually needed to bring all of their knowledge into that structured format, in their branding, in their style, with all of those activities. So what we help them with is put an AI solution in the middle, give them examples of those outputs that were required, and use the AI to go and work through all their AI, all their knowledge, drag that together, build the structured articles. What would normally take us probably about, I think that project was about 3 months worth of work, took us about 1 month. The other really interesting finding out of that piece of work is not only was the AI very good at doing that more efficiently, but actually the quality was very, very high. And we still had human in the loop there. So there's an opportunity for the human to solve the problem. But the ability for the AI to write very high quality content document at speed would actually outstrip all our expectations. So the client was delighted they could move into that system and then get on with it. Now that's that solution is one that took us a couple of days to write. So it's a very quick, very low cost activity for us to do alongside the other activities we were doing at that point. I might hand over to you, Bart, to give the example around the refrigeration logistics group.
Yeah, good one. Thank you, Todd. As a way of introducing this one, really the latest and greatest in the world of AI is something called agentic AI, which is really in all the news at the moment. And I thought I'd give you a little bit of backstory on that first. But essentially, an AI agent is really a large language model, such as GPT-4. And what you do is you give it a specific task to perform. So language models, as I'm sure you all know, if you've played around with ChatGPT, have got pretty much an encyclopedic knowledge of different approaches to just about every possible situation. And so it's important when you're using them as an AI agent to give them clear job descriptions and guidelines and context, because what you're really asking a language model to do is to reason through and solve a problem or problems that you might ask of it. So it's important to understand that an AI agent is predictive. So in the same way that ChatGPT works by predicting, the text that you're looking for, an AI agent predicts what a human might do in a given situation. So an AI agent is designed to get instructions in plain English, just like you'd interact with GPT. And it draws on a wealth of business knowledge to inform its decisions. And, you can augment that business knowledge, with your own policies and procedures, for example. So it's got very specific knowledge about how your organization does a particular task. And then the agent itself can use pre-built tools like workflows, built-in RPA, if anyone's familiar with that, like robotic process automation. So it has ways of executing its job and interacting with your business systems. So to give you an example with this refrigerated logistics company, we're piloting an AI agent for them that is going to be responsible for consignment ordering. So essentially they've got a small team at the moment who process new consignments into their ERP system. The problem is that they're very reactive. They spend most of their time doing data entry. So the business is determined to improve customer experience and wants the team to take on a more proactive role, spending time with customers, right, rather than just doing data entry. Now, traditional automation techniques wouldn't work here because you're dealing with a whole bunch of customers emailing in their orders in lots of different ways. And traditional automation needs structure. But in this situation, you can put your AI agent in front, you can have it have a look and monitor those mailboxes that the orders come in from, and it can understand the emails that are coming in for a new order. It can look at the attachments, it can understand a PDF or an Excel document, and it can pull and structure the information from all of these unstructured data sources that previously automation techniques just couldn't do. And so it's a really exciting use case because we can now do things with AI and automation that could never have been done before. Health rostering. So this is another good one. We work with a large healthcare provider. They've got about a dozen public and private hospitals across Australia, and we have in place, and we've had in place now for a few years, essentially an automated rostering system there to help their nurse unit managers across those hospitals, deal with a pretty significant burden, which is obviously rostering. Now, the automation's been in place. It's been a traditional kind of RPA solution for the longest time, but more recently, we're looking to pilot an AI agent that takes on a bit of a predictive analytics role. So the idea here is that the agent can review, the history of rosters for any given ward or hospital, but it can also give consideration to the patient admission system. And so what the AI agent can do with this information is essentially predict and and create draft rosters for the nums, sort of further, reducing the amount of time that they're spending creating rosters, which is, as I say, not an insignificant amount of their time. And then the nums simply get to, review their draft rosters and make any adjustments, and away they go. And thank you, Todd. The last one there is an aged care provider. So we're conducting a pretty big AI and automation review. They're a very large provider, probably the largest in Australia. And what we're doing there is essentially looking for high impact AI opportunities that align with their business strategy. But obviously we're looking to improve efficiency, but importantly, optimize the existing technology, that they have in place there. This isn't a rip and replace. It's, how do we work with what the organization has already got? And, in that case, it's a case of conducting a whole bunch of stakeholder interviews. We're assessing their enterprise architecture, and we're building out a prioritization framework for the opportunities, and developing what is essentially a self-funding AI roadmap. So, obviously you can take the benefits and the financial benefits you get from the first one or two opportunities that you seek to apply AI and automation to, and you can take those savings and reinvest them into the organization to create that ongoing effect of continuous improvement. I think that's about it. I might hand over back to you there, Todd.
Thanks. It's a really nice flywheel effect. It can self-fund and keep going. Hopefully that gives you a really good illustration of the complexity change from, as simple as really using some of the existing technology in your existing environment and the financial systems, all the way to, self-funding models that can continuously drive AI solutions, even if we don't know what they might be, into an organization. So quite diverse list of activities going on. I thought this might be a good way to now get us down into the weeds a little bit around the call center world. And at the top there, you'll see this is a cost to serve. Let me see if I can get it to work. Yeah, cost to serve is really driven a lot by average handle time, as you can see here. And I've broken that down into our classic kind of breakdown. And then the journey that AI can assist with through that process. Everything from in the IVR, collecting the information, making sense of it, surfacing that information for an agent, helping them through the research. As they're talking to a customer, they can continue to surface that information and document the information as well, assisting the staff member as Bart sort of described. Also here, they've got the opportunity to then act. The new AI, agentic AI solutions can actually get out there and do work for you. And you can have multiple agents doing work for you, for the agent. So the agent doesn't have to be working through multiple systems or screens or other activities. This will start executing those, and often with your applications or RPA solutions. And then lastly, the after call wrap solution, which is really listening through the call to take notes and do things like that. The intent there is if the aggregated solution would typically look to save you around 30% of your cost. So if we talk about cost here, the other really interesting thing that happens, particularly after call wrap one, because you're getting a higher quality in general and consistency of record, the second call is also quicker because you're not hunting through the notes and trying to interpret things. You've got a consistent set of record that you can then work through. So we're seeing less repeat calls, and we're also seeing shorter second handle time calls as well. And then you're underpinning all of this, we've got our quality assurance tools that can potentially, if done well, help the organization in an automated way. What that ultimately is driving is over on the right-hand side, basically releasing staff to be more accessible and responsive, allowing for a faster speed of service. We know all our customers don't want to be on the line for any more time than they need to be, and getting that accuracy together. We're seeing a good increase in employee satisfaction, which to me was actually quite a big surprise. And just things like, there's been a lot of conversation traditionally about removing work that's not meaningful. And that does happen. But the other things that happen is, things become easier as well. You can say yes to your customers more often because the speed at which you can execute things and let the customer know that something's solved or done makes for a very more engaging customer experience, which also means the staff are more engaged as well. And then lastly, obviously the business goals. You know, if we're able to deliver things better and cheaper, ultimately it gives you a better brand and results in growth for the business, and typically a couple of the larger drivers. But we're seeing even in things like health, you know, making sure rosters are right that Bart described, and some of the other things we're doing at the moment, that's actually having an impact on more broad issues, you know, better health outcomes for customers and activities like that. The reason I wanted to show this slide is because I think this is the really simple space for most organizations to start. Like, there's so much complexity out there and so much noise. What we're seeing is, you know, if you can just solve that after call wrap piece and get 30 seconds, 60 seconds out of your after call wrap using an AI solution, number one, it will pay for itself really quickly. Number two, it's a solution that's already built into most of your tools. So it's just a matter of implementing it effectively. And number three, you've got all this practice. So now if you want to go to a more complicated solution, it's not a big leap, and you can make that solution with confidence, along with informing your executive team with some real data that you've been able to perform. The other really nice thing about using it is the speed at which you can validate performance. Because it's in average handle time, it's all measured very quickly in a call center. So within 10 days, you really know if this tool is even working, it's creating value, or it's not. So I quite like that model. It's easy to do ROI. It's easy to measure customer satisfaction. You can generally pick up employee engagement as well. And the company, it's demonstrable to the company the value that's being created. I think moving from, yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to ask a question. And, you know, we're talking to, you know, quite a few members who are, you know, either at some stage of that after call wrap. And the other important thing that they've included is, again, it's not an automatic call wrap up, click, now it's saved. The agent can still read it and see that it's right and make sure it's relevant, because again, there's that human need. So you talked about that employee engagement increase. They still feel as though they own part of that process, because they are, or do you know what I mean? Like, they're almost, you know, validating what's in there. So it's actually minimizing other risks around disassociation, etc. Within that process. But there's a great question in here from someone on the line in relation to how do you reduce delays when, say, connecting old contact center systems, so legacy solutions and platforms, etc., with new third-party tools. Specifically, how do you make sure agents can get information and respond to customers right away instead of long waits? Like, you guys would know how to make it seamless. Like, it's there isn't, you seamlessly bring this stuff together.
Yes. So from a technology perspective, it's that can be very seamless. So without knowing the detail of the actual question, but again, I think it's a really good question, because it's sort of, the technology is not the constraint typically. It's the constraint is, you know, change management, enabling your staff, getting the people ready, and all of those things. And your point before, Fran, was a good one, because yes, you've got a human in the loop, but then the danger is actually the AIs are pretty good at this. So when that human looks at it, they go, oh, I'm not going to even read that, click next. So there's actually a counter training piece around QA to make sure people do check and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a really good question. One of the big challenges, of course, integration as well, particularly some of the legacy systems and getting those right. But a lot of that can be overcome by some of the tools that are in market now that are able to read the screens without having to actually be integrated into systems and other things. So there's almost always a workaround to those problems. And back to the point before also, is it doesn't take long to test it. You know, so if it's not working and it's not going well, then we can kind of test it and then get out quickly. Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Thanks for the question. The next one, you know, moving to implementation. So if we take all that learning and all the visibility of what's happened in the past, we've built a model that we'll definitely send this to you, that shows, you know, the 5 steps in order to, you know, accelerate your AI journey and actually implement it. So, you know, getting ready with all the targets, the readiness requirements, making sure it's in a solution design for the whole service, they're all triggers that fail if you need to do each of those pieces. Enabling your business and workforce, very quick to do, by the way. It doesn't take us much time to do this piece of work. And a lot of this knowledge already exists. Policies exist. We can literally lift and shift those to people. Change management exists. Leadership we can train. So this content's quick. So a couple of days, tailored obviously for each organisation. You can pilot quickly. So I really think 10 days you can get through an AI pilot. You can run them a lot longer, and a lot of organisations prefer 3 months or a quarter because they want to get real runs on the board. But you can run it that quickly, and you go through a pretty, rigorous approach to that. The scale is quick too. So once you've got to that point and you've proved the pilot, to move to scale and to scale it up, that's when all your fine tuning come in. Optimization, you've learned something through the pilot. You're able to really drive up the pipeline of future work as well, because people tend to get excited through the pilot. They've got 100 ideas about what's next. So you can put that into your scale plan. You can get a really good pipeline. You can start to hand over to BAU. And then, as Bart was talking about, we really love this concept of doing a self-funding growth model around your AI solutions. And you can add other automations into there so that you're using the actual benefit created by the implementation to fund the next cycle and the next cycle. It's a very rare in our world we get an opportunity to do something like this. Typically, you've got to spend a lot of money up front, you've got to build, and then you hope it works out and you see big plans, but actually you can run this cycle pretty quickly in your organisation. So, and to be fair, I think there's a lot of press and market about how complex it can be, and it can be super complex. But I think that's designed by some of the vendors or solutions out in market to make it harder than it needs to be. So there's a bunch of work in here that I will share it with you anyway, that you can get access to. And I do believe this is really the cycle for the year ahead. It's how do you implement, get out of the noise. Let's just get some runs on the board and get going. And I've just put a little map down the bottom. It takes a bit of time to move into your AI maturity, and then you've got change management and project management underpinning it. I think this slide, I just wanted to drop it in there, and I'll move reasonably quickly through the next couple, because this is the noise we hear. So as customer science and COPC, we spend a lot of time thinking about, Alex is talking about operations, how it fits together, the research and the market. We spend a lot of time trying to translate it into service design, how it helps your whole system. But what we find is there's this massive noise sitting underneath, lots of stakeholders getting involved. And this is just a scratch on the surface of some of the vendors and organizations that are out there. The trick is bringing that coherent story together. Which vendors are we using? How do we get a very targeted solution that's relevant to you? And then how do we use the right vendors at the right time? And my advice is typically use your existing partners, the existing organizations in your business, because then you've already got safety. You already know who they are, great relationships, they work. It's just a matter of getting their solution to work. And a lot of them are very consistent with one another, very good. And there's heaps. Like, I haven't even put in people like Creative Virtual, Live Pro. There's a bunch of other tools that are also using AI solutions in market. So, and I think they've all got their role. Great technology providers, people who can integrate and deploy the systems. We've got great organizations like Auscontact, who are our industry body, and each of them have great role. And our aim from Alex and I is to bring that cohort together, put into your implementation plan so you can actually get a result and get the outcomes that you want. So that's the outcome. I've just put a few questions in here, which we won't have time to go over, but it's a nice place to start. Just get practical. What are the technologies you've got? What are the processes and services that take time out of your business? And how could you translate it into a benefit? I've shared a bit of a business case template here. This will come out with our pack. The idea is to really rapidly put together some of these key information points that we will be working with an organization to deliver a final recommendation. And I hope that gives you a simple tool to be able to kind of fill the blanks and then create a conversation with your leadership team to allow you to actually get going. Because I think this is one of the really hard pieces, is to get a start. And in terms of next steps, I'd love to, I think there's a million next steps to be done. Typically, we see a business case, engage one of us to give you some advice. We do no obligation discussion to give you some a starting point. So, you don't start you start in a targeted way. And then gain endorsement internally, get a start with a structured model and a pilot, which is kind of what we shared with you today. And then I just wanted to make sure there was a place for us to share with you how Alex and I are best used, I guess, as you're going through that journey, and how we can help. So Alex with the research and the operational excellence, and how he can bring that together to give you insights so you've got the best chance of success. Where do you work? And then we'll help you with how do you take that and bring that to life, so that we can give you a really targeted solution that's a right fit and gives you really the highest return on investment for your AI solution. And I think that's where I finish up, Fran. So I know I haven't left much time for questions, but there's four.
No, that's all right. That's incredibly informative. And I think, we certainly hear from a number of people in the market that one thing they're challenged by is all of that noise in the system.
Yeah.
So multiple vendors, everybody's got a product. They've all got something that sounds kind of similar, but actually what's right for them, and how do they step into it without kind of understanding almost vendor speak sometimes. So, we're seeing a lot of organizations decide to tap into some of that third party expertise. That's, again, I call it's vendor agnostic, right? The right partners to work with, but equally you actually help them nut out, those questions that kind of need to be answered in that formative stage internally. And I loved those 3 questions you had up on the board. They're almost things that leaders could do some brainstorming themselves just in their teams, and really kind of, what is it we're trying to do here? How could we take this further? Like a great starting point. So fantastic. I know we're close to time, and there is obviously we've had a few questions that have gone along. I think there's been loads of information provided today, and we will be in a position to give some of that out to people in the slides, so which is a fantastic opportunity to sort of take that away and really absorb it. And again, Alex, Todd, Bart, you guys are happy for people to reach out on the back of the session. I know you guys are always willing to step in and support our members when they've got questions, etc., etc. So don't be afraid to reach out, guys. Connect with them on LinkedIn and really utilize their expertise. Again, as a starting point, they're fantastically committed to helping you within the industry. So I'd encourage that earnestly. We've got lots of people saying thanks for a great session, guys. Super practical, loads of opportunity to learn and really take it away and start thinking about what could that mean for you in your organisation. As we said at the beginning, we'll send out the recording, we'll send out all of the information available, but hope you found today's session great. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Bart. Thank you, Todd.
Pleasure.
Great session as always.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Ron.
Cheers.